The Real Nightmare on Elm Street. Ghostly fuckery at the Phelps house. This is the true story of the Phelps mansion haunting. One of the weirdest and most disturbing ghost cases you've probably never heard of. Let's go back to 1850. Reverend Eliakim Phelps was a respected clergyman, a widower, and, recently, a newlywed again. He'd just married a young widow with 3 kids, creating a tidy little blended family. To start their new life, the Phelpses moved into a large, stately home at 1738 Elm Street in Stratford, Connecticut. The house had history. It was built by a sea captain, featured a dramatic double staircase like the ones on ships, and was the perfect backdrop for wholesome, Christian family life. For a little while, everything was great, until March 10th. That's when the real nightmare began. The Phelpses returned home from church one Sunday to find their beautiful house absolutely trashed. The front door was wide open. Furniture was knocked over. Papers were scattered everywhere, but nothing had been stolen, which was unsettling. And upstairs, in the Reverend's own bedroom, it got wilder. A woman's nightgown was laid out neatly on the bed, arms folded across the chest, like a corpse in a coffin. Some versions say there were gloves or even carrots stuck into the sleeves to mimic hands. Stockings placed where the feet would be. It looked like someone had made a creepy, homemade corpse of Mrs. Phelps. No one was in the house. The doors had been locked. And yet, someone or something had built a full-body effigy of the Reverend's wife. Reverend Phelps, trying to stay calm, got the family out of the house. He searched the place top to bottom. That's when things escalated. While he was upstairs investigating, someone or something went to work again downstairs. This time, they built an entire scene in one of the parlor rooms. 11 human-like figures, made from Mrs. Phelps' clothing, were posed like they were praying. Stockings, bonnets, gloves, all carefully arranged. Bibles were opened in front of them like they were deep in worship. In the center was a dwarf. Yes, a dwarf effigy. And above the group, a figure was suspended in midair, floating. When Phelps came back downstairs and saw it, he lost it. He grabbed one of the figures and found it was just pillows. Dressed in his wife's clothes, to the best of his knowledge, he was still alone in the house. The doors hadn't moved. No one had come in. And yet someone had managed to stage an elaborate, deeply creepy spiritual display in complete silence. In a matter of minutes. That wasn't the end of it. Newspapers at the time reported multiple occurrences of these effigies. One article described some of the figures were kneeling beside the beds, and some bending their faces to the floor in attitudes of deep humility. These manifestations occurred sometimes when the room was locked, and sometimes when it was known no person had been there. No visible power by which they could have been produced. Effigies, dwarves, praying ghosts, reading Bibles. Apparently, none of this was enough to convince the Phelps family to leave. They stayed, and they got to know their ghosts. And according to the Phelpses, there were 2 types of spirits in the house. There were the friendly ones, weird roommates. These ghosts moved stuff from room to room. Fire pokers, books, a single potato, random bits of cloth. Sometimes they left drawings in Reverend Phelps' notebooks. They even once drew what were described as hieroglyphs on a turnip in the kitchen. Friendly enough, if you don't mind ghosts scribbling on your produce. But then there were the other ghosts, the assholes. These spirits screamed in the night. They hurled objects across the room. They set fires. They were especially drawn to the children. Daughter Anna reported being slapped by invisible hands. Red welts would appear on her skin, even when no one was around. One spirit allegedly tried to smother her with her pillow while she was alone. Then there was Harry, Reverend Phelps' son. Something set fire to Harry's bed while he was in it. Another time, clergymen visiting the house witnessed Harry's clothing torn off his body by invisible hands while he sat perfectly still across the room. The family tried to figure out what was happening. They called in neighbors, other reverends, mediums, and people saw it. They heard it. Multiple letters and first-hand accounts were published in Connecticut newspapers. Seances were held. One local reverend, initially a skeptic, ended up apologizing to Harry after he watched objects move across the room all on their own. Reverend Phelps himself said, "I witnessed these things hundreds and hundreds of times, and I know that in hundreds of instances they took place when there was no visible power by which the motion could have been produced." Theories started flying. Some blamed the ghost of Goody Bassett, a woman executed in 1651 for so-called witchcraft on that same stretch of Elm Street, her crime, talking back to the town elders. Others blamed Harry. Medium Andrew Jackson Davis visited the home and believed Harry's teenage grief and anger were manifesting paranormal energy. Davis even claimed that the haunting followed Harry to boarding school, where he continued experiencing knocks, slaps, and torn clothing. When Harry left Stratford, the events did die down, but still, the story didn't fully add up. Phelps' adult son Austin, a seminary student and die-hard skeptic, came to investigate. He brought a respected doctor from Boston. They stayed for several days. They left baffled. They heard the knocking sounds coming from inside doors and walls. They saw the strange marks. They saw the children attacked. They couldn't explain it. Eventually, the Phelps family had enough. They moved back to Philadelphia within a year. Harry never returned to school. He finished his education at home. And after they left, the house went quiet, sort of. The Phelps house eventually became a convalescent home. Over the years, there were occasional stories of ghost sightings, odd noises, shadows, whispers, but nothing ever matched the insane energy that plagued the Phelps family, which makes you wonder, were the ghosts tied to the house or the people inside it? Interestingly, Phelps' adult son Austin went on to become a pastor. Like his father, his daughter, Elizabeth Stewart Phelps Ward, became a spiritualist novelist, feminist firebrand, and animal rights activist. She even told women to burn their corsets, which is a ghost story in its own right. So yeah, the Phelps family, not boring. To this day, no one's figured out exactly what haunted 1738 Elm Street. But if you ask me, if you walk into your house and see a bunch of dolls made out of your wife's clothing, arranged like they're at church, just burn it down and never look back. If this real-life haunting gave you chills, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Would you have stayed in the house after the nightgown corpse scene? Or would you have sprinted out of there like a Victorian track star? Until next time, sleep tight, and maybe keep an eye on your turnips.